the equality song. Thank you. Don't let hatred take over us. Have no clue of where is the love, where is the love. Together we must come along, because divided we will fall.
It's important to talk about this subject, not only locally, but nationally and globally. We're at a pivotal time right now, because the worst kind of hate crime is legalized hate crime. Presently in the United States, we have Don't Ask, Don't Tell. It has not been repealed yet, and we have Defense of Marriage Act. Those are legalized hate crimes, just like apartheid is a legalized hate crime when it existed. And oppression is the basis for all inequality of all people that are treated in a discriminatory manner. And no group that is ever treated in a discriminatory manner stays there. Eventually, there is always the point of confrontation, and at that point, that is where the oppressed meet with the oppressor, and eventually equality happens. We have to believe in diversity and the equality of that diversity. And with that, the most important thing that Dr. King explained over and over again in his speeches is universal love. And so it's important to get there and to understand it. Often in my role as the executive director of DADT Fed Globe, I have dealt with a lot of people that have had to deal with serving in silence. And the pain and the hate that they have endured from serving in silence is unbelievable. These people have post-traumatic stress disorder from that law. And somebody in the United States needs to take responsibility for that hate. It's unacceptable. And recently I've been working with people to get training and other things going on in the Department of Defense, and they actually had an excuse for this prejudice. They said, we're not really prejudiced, it's just that military thing. They are so embarrassed they cannot even say, don't ask, don't tell. Right. They know it's wrong. Yeah. We know it's wrong, and we know it's got to go. It's no excuse for them to continue the oppression of any community.
And so over 5,000 U.S. soldiers have given their lives serving their country in Iraq and Afghanistan. Did you know how many were gay?
It's gotta go.
Hey, hey.
Ho, ho.
Don't ask, don't tell.
It's gotta go.
Hey, hey.
Ho, ho.
Don't ask, don't tell.
And Robin McGee, who came all the way from Fresno, thank God. One of our best activists in California, come on up here. And this is important, perhaps the most important part of today's event. And I will let Cecile introduce it.
Robin and I are going to share this list because it's a very, very long. I was going to introduce this by saying that actually many of my friends are here today and don't know this. My best buddy was killed 11 years ago. He was also serving in the military. He was in the Army. He was not, his killing was a civilian killing. It was not related to Don't Ask, Don't Tell. It was not related to his sexuality. But because we were best friends and not partners or married, I didn't find out about his death directly from a military service person, as is done for spouses and direct family. And it pained me for years after that I had to find out in a very indirect manner about his death. And so my heart really goes out to the partner of August Provost, who had to find out from the media that the person who called him the love of his life had been murdered, rather than finding out in the most honorable way directly from a military service person. And that is part of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. Names and stories of LGBT and other hate crime murder victims and suicide victims are compiled from a video produced by Rob Kossel, a video I found on YouTube which has been viewed by over 78,000 people so far. This list is very incomplete. It does not include the most recent LGBT hate crimes, including 2 recent suicides in April by 2 11-year-old boys who were being bullied in school for being called gay and ended up deciding to take their own lives.
Gisberta, a transgender woman from Portugal, 1960 to 2006. Gisberta was tortured and sexually abused for days, then brutally murdered, killed by a horde of 14 boys ranging in age from 10 to 16 and raised to hate faggots. Ayaz Mohani, 16 years old, I want to say before I read this last part, I did come from Fresno to stand in solidarity with all of you here from North San Diego County, and all of you who came from other areas of the state and outside of the state. I think the reality is while we stand here together, we realize that not all of the people that we've listed tonight come from a hate crime because they were LGBT, but also because of a hate crime because of the color of their skin. And sadly, we live in a state where we sometimes idolize the king of pop, but sometimes forget the people that defend us to make that pop possible. So I ask all of you in these last moments to remember the name of a gay person who is in our minds tonight. He is the reason we are here. He was murdered while working on guard duty as a sentry at Camp Pendleton, Seaman August Provost, June 30th, 2009. He was only 29 years old with a promising future. His murder is under investigation. However, what we do know is that he was harassed for the majority of this time on active duty, for preliminary being gay and secondary for being an African American. Silently, he lived with this deep emotional pain because don't ask, don't tell, prevented him from complaining to his chain of command for fear of being fired.
No one should ever have to spend an entire year suffering in a cruel and hostile work environment. Don't ask, don't tell equals silence equals deeply emotional death. So let us all stand here in silence for this emotional violence. Thinking about all those that cannot speak out loud, that are forced in a claustrophobic emotional closet, not of their own doing, but to please prejudiced people. As we stand in silence, we send them strength and love, as well as thoughts for Seaman August Provost, a man that passed before his time. One is too many murder victims for our community and, in fact, for the greater society.
Hi, folks. We have a process. Each and every one of you has a flower, and each and every one of you should have a candle. As you form single file to go on the bridge with your signs and candles, we want you to put your flower near the bigger flowers that are in memorial with the sign about him and the American flag, to show solidarity for his memorial and to stand in silence. So we appreciate everyone, and we appreciate especially those that are military, that are lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender, that are also serving in silence and forced to live in an emotional death. And before we leave, we have two requests. Does anybody in here personally know Seaman Provost and would like to speak? If so, come forward. Does anybody else in here know of a lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgender that died before their time and they would like to mention that person's name? Because we'd like to give them that opportunity.
David Stump took his own life in 1988 in Maine, a friend of mine.
Remembering all of the lesbian, gay, transgender, bisexual, queer folk who died of AIDS because the government didn't acknowledge the fact that we were dying. AIDS is a hate crime.
I actually went to the Air Force. I joined when I was 18. I was put on the delayed enlistment program right out of high school. And I'll say this right now, I did not know that I was gay when I joined the Air Force. As a matter of fact, I had a boyfriend. His name was Vince, Italian. I'm from Chicago. And I joined the Air Force, and, you know, I had some feelings for girls, but I didn't know what that was. So I didn't consider myself gay. And back then, they actually asked you, are you a homosexual? And I wasn't. So, of course, I said, no, I'm not. And I ended up going into the military. I joined in April 12th, 1989 is actually when my enlistment date was. And I went through boot camp. I got a top secret clearance. Actually, my job was a command post controller. And I actually worked for SAC, which is Strategic Air Command. And if you work in SAC as a command post controller, you should know, if you're in the Department of Defense, that I had one of the highest military clearances that you can have. There is only about 5% of the people in the entire country who have the clearance that I had, because all we did was play war games. So as time went on, you know, I had a lot of boyfriends in the Air Force, actually. I mean, I was young, so I was experimenting. But at one point I did kiss a girl, and apparently somebody saw me kiss that girl and they reported me for it. So at the time I was at Spokane at Fairchild Air Force Base, which is a bomber base, B-52 bombers. But I was out at Carswell Air Force Base, which is in Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas. It's not there anymore. I was there for training. And as soon as I came back from that training, I was immediately taken and told that I was getting put under investigation. And I'm like, for what? And they're like, for homosexuality. And I'm like, and still in my mind, I'm like, I'm not a homosexual. I'm like, okay, put me under investigation. What happened to me is I got my top secret clearance taken away from me. I got my pay grade reduced. I got taken out of my job. I got put down to work with other criminals who were actually getting kicked out of the military for actual criminal offenses. And for 9 months they investigated me because they could never prove that I was a homosexual. My only saving grace in all of this time was that the commander of the 92nd Bomb Wing, which is Captain Marie Bunke, was having a baby. Her secretary they were both having babies. Her secretary was having a baby too. And so she needed a secretary. So for 3 months out of that 9 months, I got to go work underneath of Captain Marie Bunke in the 92nd Bomb Wing. And she got a chance to get to know me. Well, soon thereafter, we got a new first sergeant who was a complete jerk, and he hated homosexuals and said to me, if you're a homosexual, I don't want you working here, blah, blah, blah. And he actually kicked me out of the squadron, and I had to go work with now doing things like scrubbing toilets every single day, shoveling the snow every day, because in Fairchild, they have what's called fog dispersal. It's kind of in a valley, and so when the bombers and the planes, the KC-135 tankers come down, it's always foggy, so they shoot propane up into the air, and it comes down as snow almost. So every single day it snows. So I had to go every single day and shovel the snow, that was the fog dispersal, and honestly I did it for 8 hours a day, and my hands would bleed every single day because I was shoveling with the shovel. Then I had to go around, now this is from a top secret clearance with the general on the base knowing me for my first name, to cleaning other people's crap out of their toilets. That's what I got kicked down to. So my investigation continued. I got, the OSI kept on badgering me. Are you gay? Who else is gay? I lost all of my friends. Nobody wanted to be my friend because they were afraid to be around me. Just one horrible thing after another. I almost wanted to kill myself. It got to be so bad. It was such a horrible investigation. The lawyer that I got assigned, I was lucky in this aspect because he was getting out of the Air Force. And he said to me, Vicki, I don't care if you're gay or not. He said, there's a lot of gay people in the military. He goes, but I'm going to tell you right now, the difference is you have a top secret clearance and they don't. And because you have a top secret clearance, you will go to prison for being a homosexual. And I was like, well, why am I going to go to prison? He said, because you're a threat to national security. And if you have a top secret clearance in the military, you're a threat to national security because back on the books, there's still a law, back from the Hoover days, that says that if you're a homosexuality, you are actually a threat to national security because they think that homosexuals would rather give up their country than be known as being homosexuals. So he said, if they find out that you're guilty, you're going to go to prison for a minimum of 5 years for kissing a girl. So he said, I'm advising you right now to waive your rights to a discharge board because you're going to be put in a panel in front of 5 people, 3 officers, 2 enlisted. He said, if 3 of those people think that you're a homosexual, you're going to go to Leavenworth Military Prison for a minimum of 5 years for being a threat to national security. So he advised me to waive my rights to a discharge board and advised me to put together a packet of information on my behalf. So I gathered all this information from all these people, officers, enlisted, everybody who can testify to my character. Well, in the end, thank God he did tell me to do that, because they convicted me of a homosexual act. They never convicted me of being a homosexual, but because someone said that they saw me kissing a girl, they won out, and the act of me kissing a girl actually got me kicked out of the Air Force and would have put me in prison had I gone before an actual court of military law. So I ended up getting kicked out, and my saving grace was bringing back Captain Marie Bunke. It was her decision whether I got an honorable discharge or dishonorable, and she sat me in her office and said, I don't know if you're gay or not, you're very young, I was 20 at the time. She said, but I can't imagine a better airman than you, and the Air Force is actually losing a great person. So she gave me an honorable discharge. And that's actually what happened to me. And I got kicked out. She actually asked me to pick my discharge date, and I could have gone through the New Year's. It was at the end of the year, so I got kicked out on December 27th, 1990, because I wanted to be able to celebrate my New Year's. And then my mom came and drove out to Washington packed up all my stuff, and my last memory of the Air Force was freezing cold weather in the middle of the winter with a security policeman with his M16 standing over me, gave me a razor blade and made me scrape my Department of Defense sticker off of the front of my car. And that's my last memory of the military for kissing a girl. Lost my top secret clearance, lost all the training, and now look at the state the military's in. For what?
Today, to let everyone know that this discriminatory and this damaging law that exists should not exist. Americans that are willing to die for their country, who are asked to make the many sacrifices that are involved with being in the military, to serve, like you won't sign one thing that will allow them to serve openly. It's not like we're asking you to, do something ridiculous. This is common sense. Like, why not? You have the power, so don't tell me go holler at people that are not on my side. We are very much hollering at them as well, but it's an insult to hear you say go holler at them. They're not on your side and they're not the ones, we're working on it. To me, a year-long study of the effect of gays and lesbians serving in the military openly, is that really all you have? I really doubt that.
Hi, my name is Cade Montana, and this is my little service dog, Lily. She's my PTSD service dog. We're here to make a video today about talking a little bit about my experience in the Marine Corps and what I went through and whatnot. My grandfather was an officer down at Paris Island in the early 50s, I believe from 1949 to 1952. And he's part of the reason I joined the military, not necessarily the Marine Corps. I also had an uncle that was at the Pentagon when it was hit on 9/11 that was hurt. I also have an uncle that was in the Army. He died 2 years ago from natural causes. But they served their armies their whole life. My uncles were both West Point graduates. And I wanted to carry that proud tradition in my family, And I didn't expect to see all the harassment that took place when I was in. When I was in the Marine Corps, women only made up 8% of the Marine Corps. And the harassment, the sexual abuse that took place is beyond horrific. A lot of people have no idea what goes on behind closed doors. They're so worried about us, what goes on behind our doors with DOMA, they need to worry about what goes on behind the closed doors in the military. If they worried about that, maybe things wouldn't be quite so bad. Now I want you to picture something with me. There's a base in Japan, Sasebo Air Force Base, and my cousin gets off his ship and he goes into a bar just to have a good time and hang out. It's the first time he's had liberty in probably 2 months. 2 of his shipmates follow him from his ship to the bar, into the bathroom, and stomp him to death. The only reason my aunt could identify him is because of a tattoo he had. There were imprints on his face from the shoes they used to bash his head in. All his ribs were broken, both of his lungs were collapsed, his spleen was ruptured, and all because he chose to go to a gay bar on his own time. Stuff like this doesn't need to happen, and it particularly affects the trans community as well. We're one of the higher risk categories simply because of who we are, and we choose to live our lives to be honest and open, and people just can't take that and choose to acts of hate against us for no reason. This is the kind of stuff that we need to make aware, and this is the kind of stuff we need to know. March of '93, and I left for boot camp in June of '93, the day after I graduated high school. I served 13 years honorably in the Marine Corps, did 3 tours overseas in Iraq. I got hurt on my last tour over in Iraq, and it was found out that I had a lesbian partner for 9 years. I don't know how they couldn't find out about their 9 years, really? The government's supposed to be smart, right? Intelligence, 9 years, couldn't find that out. Anyway, so I was busted as to having a lesbian partner at the time, and I went ahead and got discharged from the service under bad conduct discharge. One thing that people don't realize is it depends a lot on how the NCOIC, the commanding officer, wrote up a person's discharge as to what code they got when they got out, when they were kicked out under Don't Ask, Don't Tell. I lost all my benefits I would have had after getting out after 13 years, all my VA benefits. I was 7 years from retirement. I would have retired. Actually, this year would have been 20 years I would have retired. So it stings a little bit to talk about that, but I'm glad to know that Don't Ask, Don't Tell is now repealed and now allows gay service members. However, it does not affect the trans community. Seeing as I'm a trans man, even if I was still at the age where I could enlist, simply because I'm transgender and because of the way they have it written up in their health codes that we're not allowed to re-enlist because it's listed as a mental disease, which is inaccurate. It's a physical deformity we're all born with. Everybody has things in their life they need to fix. Some are bigger than others, and that's simply the way it is. So hopefully one day Don't Ask, Don't Tell will include the transgender community and let us serve openly and with pride as we'd all like to do.
My name's Chris Longacre. I was in the Army in 2007. I got discharged under Don't Ask, Don't Tell. I come from generations of military. My father was 20 years in the Army. My mother is a DADT government. And Also, my sister is in the military right now, is active duty as an officer. When I was in the military, I was harassed because I was like the butch female with the feminine looking female, and so they, of course harassed me until I got discharged for exercising more, just, saying I was a disease and stay away from the other soldiers. Right now, Don't Ask, Don't Tell got repealed, and so I'm trying to go into the Army Reserve for 4 years to commission as an officer. And also when I'm active duty, the medical benefits my girlfriend will not have for her to possibly have a baby in the future with me because of DOMA. So we're trying to repeal DOMA so that way we can all have the equal benefits.
I'm a United States Army veteran, and I'm here to speak on behalf of all the gay, bi, and trans men and women who are currently serving in the armed forces, who are veterans, and for those who were wrongfully discharged for their sexual orientation. There's a gentleman here, his name is Anthony. Anthony is one of those enlistees who dreamed of serving in the military, graduated from boot camp, completed his training in intelligence, but was discharged immediately after he was found to be gay. I, on the other hand, was able to serve my full term because I was in the closet. I'm very proud to have served my country. It was certainly a life-changing experience, but it was not free of difficulties. Military training in and of itself is a challenge, but no training could have prepared me to handle the difficulties such as unwelcome sexual advances made by more than one heterosexual male who held a rank higher than I. I am by no means here to attack any gender or sexual orientation, but it must be known gay soldiers are not necessarily the ones who need to be identified or isolated to potentially demonstrate the propensity or intent to engage in sexual misconduct. While on training exercises, soldiers are often placed in situations in which they sleep in a multi-person tent or share a foxhole with a comrade. It's a form of unit cohesion. But unit cohesion does not only occur among same sexes. Integrated units lend themselves to situations where there's potential for sexual harassment between two or more parties. Therefore, President Obama, I'm asking you to repeal Don't Ask, Don't Tell. To enforce a more stringent sexual harassment policy. A policy that enforces zero tolerance among any man or woman to commit sexual harassment. Why continue to follow a policy that further depletes needed men and women? I'm talking about valuable people serving in positions of infantry, intelligence, military police, medical staff, and many more. Keeping Don't Ask, Don't Tell, in effect, demonstrates to me and others our service is good enough for this country, but our identity is not. President Obama, as Commander-in-Chief, please begin the needed steps to repeal Don't Ask, Don't Tell. Thank you. And it's my honor to introduce to you a man who is a decorated and respected soldier. He's served in Iraq. He earned his degree as an Arabic linguist from West Point. Ladies and gentlemen, Lieutenant Dan Choi.
Love is worth it. I'm going to share a poem with you in Arabic, a love poem. انت حر امام الشمس نهار وانت حر امام قمر الليل والكواكب وانت حر حيث لا شمس ولا قمر ولا كواكب ولكن انت عبد لمن تحب لانك تحب وانت عبد لمن يحبك لانه يحبك. You are free. You are free before the noonday sun, and you're free before the moon and the stars. And you're free when there is no sun, when there ain't no moon, and when there ain't a single star. But you are a slave to the one you love because you love him. And you are a slave to the one you love because he loves you back. Gibran Khalil Gibran. Now, there's a lot of things that are worth fighting for. I'll tell you, as a soldier, sometimes those things can be very, very expensive. But of all the things that are worth fighting for, love is worth it. Love is worth fighting for. Love is worth it. Love is worth it. Everybody say it with me. Love is worth it. Love is worth it. Love is worth it. Love is worth it. I want to tell you something a little bit about myself. Before I deployed to Iraq, I thought maybe I'd get married to, like my parents wanted, a nice Korean girl. I wanted that support. I wanted that commitment. I wanted that love before I deployed. But I thought, you know what if I don't come back alive? What if I come back in a flag-draped coffin? And that flag is folded up by my commander, and on bended knee, he gives it to a wife that's fake. Those ceremonies are solemn. You do not fake those. You do not build those on a foundation of deception and lies. I joined the Army, and I've served under Don't Ask, Don't Tell for a decade now. But I joined because I heard a leader say, ask not what your country can do for you, but ask what you can do for your country. But gay soldiers are slapped in the face and said, don't ask, don't tell. Well,
Florida, I had my first experience of fear in my life. I was surrounded by fellow recruits and supervisors who uttered words like faggot, queer, joto, though not entirely addressed to me, but this began my choice to remain silent as to who I really was. At my first command in Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, I worked in several administrative offices. Occasionally in the commanding officer's office, I would see reports from the Naval Criminal Investigation Service of suspected homosexual activity from service members. Some of the reports indicated that the suspects were seen in gay bars, possessed gay materials, or found engaged in homosexual conduct. Because of these reports, I went further into the closet. After attending the Naval Justice School in Newport, Rhode Island, did I understand the legal process of administrative discharges of service members for homosexual conduct. These discharges were now part of my job duty to process out my fellow gay shipmates who were categorized as homosexual. This job duty angered me so much, especially when certain supervisors were addressing my fellow gay sailors in a manner as if they were cattle. After reporting to my first ship on board the USS John F. Kennedy, I was relieved to have discovered that there was a group of other gay sailors. How it came about to my fellow gay sailors was thanks in part to Miss Barbara Streisand. As a new lone sailor on board, at night I went to my bed on my top rack and stared at the ceiling while listening to my Barbara Streisand tapes. One night while listening to Barbara's music with my eyes closed, I felt someone tapping my forehead. I sat up and I noticed that a sailor from the adjacent bunk was staring at me, and I pulled away my headphones and said, "Can I help you?" In a stern voice, the sailor asked, "Are you listening to Barbara Streisand?" I said, "Yes." He looked at me and smiled, and he said, "Girl." After that encounter, and since I was stationed on board the USS John F. Kennedy, I became a member of the Jackie O crew. I belonged to a brotherhood of 30 gay sailors. Being part of this group made my life much easier. But with the good also came the bad. Our legal department, where I worked, had to investigate a suicide of a sailor who jumped from the mast of a ship headfirst onto the pier. It was later discovered that the sailor committed suicide because a fellow sailor said he would tell everyone that he was gay. It saddens me that the deceased sailor had nowhere else to go for assistance. It was unfortunate that he was not part of our gay brotherhood on the ship. Never was I in more fear of my job in 1993 when Senator Sam Nunn was opposing President Clinton's promise of allowing gays to serve openly in the military. Senator Nunn went on a tour to inspect living quarters of several service personnel. I always remember the day seeing the plan of the day for our ship announcing that Senator Nunn would be visiting my ship. My department head, with the CO, assigned my living quarters for Senator Nunn to inspect. I recall hearing the senator saying how cramped the quarters were. I also recall the instant he started asking the line of sailors what their thoughts were of having homosexuals living with them in these cramped quarters. I stood towards the end of the line in fear, trembling. The initial sailors that he asked stated that they were offended if they had any homosexuals in their living quarters. Some stated that they feared that they would be victims of sexual harassment. As the senator made his way down the line, I was trying to formulate my response if he questioned me. To my surprise, a shipmate, who was a machinist mate, responded by saying he didn't care if gays were allowed to serve in the military. He just wanted them to do a good job. After that, Senator Nunn thanked everyone and left. But still, I stood by my rack, trembling from the experience.
I first would like to, if we could have a round of applause for our veterans who served before the 1993 policy. Thank you. I think that's definitely where an incredible amount of courage comes from. This policy is hurtful, it is destructive, but I can't imagine serving in a military with absolutely no protection whatsoever. So thank you. You're the reason why we're here now. So aside from that, the veterans are the reason why, of course, that this policy will be repealed eventually. It's your service. It's the road that you've laid down, the example that you've set, that we're going to win this battle on. It was in San Francisco when the California Supreme Court decided to uphold Proposition 8 that the police had come out and they had told us that if those of us who stayed around, were going to get arrested. And this was really the test to my advocacy. I text my roommate and he texted me back and he said, "Is it really that serious?" And that's when I had to make the decision again. First to come out and then to come out as an advocate. And I texted him back and I said, yes, it really is that serious. And that day I was arrested. That day began my advocacy in the media, in where the American flag that I wore around my shoulders inquired the interest of the media, and they asked, why did you wear the American flag today when you got arrested? And I said, well, I think that America has forgotten that the members of the LGBT community are citizens of this country. And I think a lot of people took that message home that day. In regards to my own story, I think most of you are fairly familiar with it. 28 months of service in the Middle East that was rewarded by having dog food shoved in my mouth, or being tied to objects, or being forced to simulate gay sex on other men. By far the most humiliating, degrading time of my life. But it's given me the opportunity to humanize this legislation. I think, unfortunately, a lot of people in this country think that Don't Ask, Don't Tell is working. And it's going to take the stories of our veterans and the courage of our veterans.
I will not recite the latest headline concerning the Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy. And I will not sit here and pretend like I'm an expert on the issue. I will just tell you of my experience. I enlisted in the United States Army National Guard and the United States Marine Corps prior to the inaction of the Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy. I graduated from high school May 31st, 1986. I enlisted in the Armed Forces May 17th, 1986. My mother had to sign the contract because I was 17, under the age and not legally binding to go into a contract. That day forever changed my life, and I thank my mother for giving me that gift, because she got me out of a life and death situation. That same day, I received my very first lesson that there was no place for gay, lesbian, bisexual, or transgender people in the armed forces. When you enlist in the armed forces, you have to go through a detailed physical and mental exam to ensure that you can handle the rigorous training to become a soldier. I spent that entire day going through the physical exam. They probed me in every orifice. They checked my eyesight. If I didn't have 20/20 vision, they gave me glasses. They made sure that I could lift anywhere from 50 to 75 pounds. It went on. And this took all day. Then it came time for the mental part of the exam. They called me to a room, and in this room was a table. The table was sitting in the middle of the room. There were 2 chairs, and one of the chairs was a soldier. He was sitting at the table with a pen in his hand and a contract on the table. He ordered me to come and sit down. He told me this was the mental part of the exam. Then he asked me, was I or have I ever been a homosexual? I had to make a split decision. I knew if I told the truth, they would not allow me to enlist in the armed forces. I knew if I lied, they would allow me to go into the armed forces. I lied because it was my ticket out. And I had to get out of a life and death situation. And when I lied, I denied the very essence of me. Not only that, I had to sign a contract stating that I was not a homosexual.
I am humbled and honored to sit on this panel to hear the testimonies of the others here, especially my own church member, Evelyn. A story I didn't know either. And to all of you who have spoken this evening. I am the Reverend Madison Shop. I am the pastor of the Pilgrim United Church of Christ, which is an open and affirming congregation in the United Church of Christ. Open and affirming in our denomination, and other denominations have their own names for that same policy, open and welcoming, or other kinds of names in different denominations. We are the subset of the United Church of Christ, in which don't ask, don't tell does not exist. It is a sad commentary in our culture when the church cannot lead to the freedom and equality of all of its members. The council member talked about representing his constituents. The church, for the most part, fails in representing their congregants. And to every pastor, and to every congregation, and to every denomination that cannot condemn, don't ask, don't tell, they have failed their calling. They have failed their calling. For the call of the church is to stand up with those whom society wants to put down. The call of the church is to stand alongside and to protect and to support those that the society seeks to put down, attack, and deny a place in the society.
Today, 3 of our friends were arrested for civil disobedience in front of the White House. 2 of our military were chained to the White House fence, and apparently still they're military and they're still stuck in prison. And apparently they're going to use the Uniform Code of Military Justice as a way to prosecute them, even though they don't intend to keep them in the military because they're gay and they told. I am Lisa Cove. I'm the Executive Director of DADT Fed Globe, and we believe that all employees of the Department of Defense, military and civilian, past and present, and the line contractors should be allowed to admit they are lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender. And that is our mission, to advocate for them and educate about them. And I'm going to pass the mic over to Fred.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Yeah, it's a very sad day that some of our friends and comrades in arms, as we've struggled for civil rights equality in this country, are now behind bars for exercising their freedom of speech. We must make sure they are free, and we must use this act of civil disobedience to further our cause, to continue our efforts for equality.
There's no reason to believe that your dreams can come true.
Shortly after, well actually, almost halfway through my military career, I had been deployed to Iraq. I had a situation where I had a Marine who had a substandard Marine who basically accidentally, not really accidentally, but basically made up a rumor about me that just happened to be true. And
today we're in El Cajon, California, outside of the Marine recruiting station, waiting for DoD FedGlobe Veterans Chairman Will Rodriguez Kennedy to ask for his job back and to be reinstated. He was originally removed from service due to the horrendous don't ask, don't tell, don't pursue law.
Yeah, my organization, another organization I'm being part of, LCR, has won its case against Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and so in the interim, the DOD, the Department of Defense will be following the policy, and they'll be allowing gay applicants. So I am going to return to service. I was a corporal in the Marine Corps, and now I'm trying to go back. What is your recruiters before? I was a corporal in the Marine Corps. I'm going back. I want to go back. You want to go back where? To the Marine Corps.
Hold on 1 second. Hey, got it?
Yes. I was corporal in the Marine Corps, and I want to try and return to service.
Can you shut the camera off?
And we're still filling out the paperwork, and we are inside the Marine recruiting station.
I'm very proud of my military members. I'm very proud of the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and I'm very proud to be a lesbian military officer. I've never had a negative experience in my 10 years in the military. There were a few that I trusted, and they were very respectful of me. What it came down to is no one really cared about my personal life, because what matters is I was able to do my job, and that I was a good officer, and I took care of the soldiers and the Marines that served under me and in my command. Nobody ever treated me poorly. Nobody ever said anything. I'm sure people assumed. However, it just was not a big deal to anyone. And fortunately, I've not had any negative experiences like those of some of my peers. And I feel empathy for those. And I'm glad that today we can celebrate and enter that.
Honestly, I don't think it's that big of a difference. Our troops were ready for this change. It was just a matter of making sure that Congress got on board. The Williams Institute estimates that there's already 60 to 65,000 gays and lesbians serving actively at this very moment. So this transition isn't going to be a large one. Okay, so I spent the first 2 years of my undergraduate education at West Point. That's the United States Military Academy. I was ranked in the top 1% of my class at West Point when I came out to my commanders and I resigned in protest of the Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy. I think the Department of Defense loses a lot more service members than just those that were discharged as a result of Don't Ask.
For legal reasons, I have to say that I am here today as the Executive Director of DoD FedGlobe, and it is not my intent to reflect the views of my employer, the Department of Defense. Today is a very special day. It is September 20th of 2011, and Don't Ask, Don't Tell has been repealed. And the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender community did not get that repealed just on its own. We had many valiant allies, and tonight I am happy to present to you one of our most valiant allies, Brigadier General David Brahms, who was in charge of the JAG officers at the Pentagon while he was working in the military before he retired. He had a long career, and every time throughout that career and after that career, he has always been on the right side of equality. And I'm happy to present General Brahms.
Tonight is a night to celebrate a signal victory, one that took an incredible amount of effort to achieve in the face of great opposition. And lest you doubt that the opposition was great, there were 1,200 retired flag and general officers, all persons of substance, all persons of great experience and facial credibility, who opted to argue against it and did so vociferously. It is a bit of a miracle that this victory was obtained. It's also a night to celebrate commitment to the fights that will follow. Those fights will be long and hard. And lest you doubt it, the Commandant of the Marine Corps about a month ago had the temerity to send out a missive saying that he wanted to increase the number of black officers in the Marine Corps. It was met with a firestorm of protest. You're social engineering. You are selecting based on race. This will destroy our Corps. Those voices are there. Those voices will be heard in your fight, in our fight. We must together fight, or tonight will become simply another day to celebrate quietly witut significant meaning. Doubt me? Let me give you some numbers. 14,000. Those are the numbers of persons who have been discharged under the Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy since its inception in 1993. 14,000 of our brothers and sisters have been discharged. Some with bad discharges, some with general discharges. There is no plan at the moment to specially review those discharges. The press release issued by the DOD today is, well, each one of you may make application on your own. The fight must take it to the Pentagon and say those are our brothers and sisters, they are persons who serve our military, and they deserve to be treated in a way which is fair and equitable. We cannot simply wave a hand and make them go away. There are literally thousands of young men and women eager to return to the military, and there is no room in the inn. Notwithstanding that they were thrown out on a policy that was, from its inception, misbegotten. A policy that required young men and women wearing uniform to violate the fundamental principle, core value, if you will, of integrity, to live a life. We celebrate the end of that, but we can't celebrate the fact that those young men and women who want to return will have a place, or that they will be compensated for the losses that they suffered through this misbegotten policy. And lest you think the fight is over, despite the Secretary of Defense, the Chairman of Joint Chiefs of Staff, who stood up and said that this is the way we must go, this is what's right, this is in keeping with historic American principle. The question is, who will follow? Discrimination in today's world has become extraordinarily clever and insidious. I don't need to call names. I don't need to preclude entry. I simply need to lay a hand on you which will diminish your worth, a clever fitness you pull, an assignment that you don't get when someone with straight does. We need to remember brothers and sisters who fit under the letter T. There is no justice for those who are transgenders, period. And if you look at today's press release, they boldly state that. There is no plan to address that. There is no plan to embrace that group of people. The fight needs to continue. You need to do it together.
The goddess and everyone that I know, and that's a lot of people, including Roseanne. Yeah, that's me. And I'm really happy that Don't Ask, Don't Tell was repealed and crowned. Because, yes, that's right. It is about time we do not discriminate against my gay community, especially those who are fighting to keep us free, who are putting their lives on the front lines. The goddess is here to give you a big, fat kiss. I love you more than anything. Mwah!
Thank you for coming and telling me. Now, as a staff non-commissioned officer, go out there and do your job. Go enforce the regulations. You don't need to come and tell me that there's people making jokes about me. I've been in the Marine Corps for 10 years. I know people make jokes about gay people. So you don't have to tell me. Go out and tell them that it's inappropriate. And I sat my whole company down, and I reinforced what the Commandant said, what the Commander-in-Chief has said, what the Secretary of the Navy has said, what the Secretary of Defense have said, what all the Joint Chiefs have said, to include the Chairman. We will treat everybody with dignity and respect. And I will, at least in my company, create an environment where everyone is respected. And if you have something to say about somebody, we've been teaching you your entire career to have the integrity to say it to somebody's face. If you have a personal problem with somebody, take it up with them. And that was pretty much the end of it.
Don't let hatred take over us. Have no clue of where is the love, where is the love. Together we must come along, because divided we will fall. The land of the free doesn't seem so free to me, stripping me of all my rights and my equality. I walk, I talk, I live, I breathe. Red blood is what I bleed. So tell me what makes you better than me. I wanna hold